The numbers don't lie, and they spell disaster for you as sacrifice.
Welcome, everybody. This is the Brace for Impact Sacrifice 2021 recap show. With us tonight is the Combat Republic, Mike Gilbert, and we have JD Oliva of the Fight Game Media podcast here to discuss this event. My name is Jeremy Finestone, and I'll be your host for this recap. So tonight we had the main event of Moose versus Rich Swann. Moose had the TNA title, and Rich Swann had the Impact title, and it was the unification match in order to face Kenny Omega at Rebellion on April 24th. Mike, what did you think of the main event tonight?
I thought it was great. I thought it delivered. Impact, what they do well is they try to save everything for like their last 2 or 3 matches on their big shows. I thought Moose looked impressive as hell. I thought he looked absolutely great. I did feel like the match took a while to get going, and they were really focused on heat, and that gets a little bit difficult when there's nobody in the audience. I know we had the crowd noise .wave thing that they were playing, which I do think they do a decent job of that, but so it did take a little bit to get going, but once it did, I thought it was great, and I thought the drama of the match was really good. I thought the athleticism was really good. They had two, like it was almost old school in a way. They really built up to 2 high spots, and I thought those 2 high spots were they did a great job of executing those things, and then I really liked the finish of the match.
There were a couple really good high spots. There was that moonsault off the top rope, and then there was that handspring RKO in the match that both really changed the dynamic of the match. JD, what did you think of the match?
I liked it. I still, when I think of Moose, I still think of Ring of Honor Moose in my head. So it's a pleasure, because I don't get to see Impact as much as I probably should. It's a pleasure to see how far he's grown in the last 5 years. It really is impressive to see just where he's come. So this match surprised me in a lot of ways, because I did not get to see the 6-man from what it was like a month or so ago. I forget when that was. So this is like me really digging into watching what Moose could do with Rich Swann. Rich Swann's great. Everyone knows that. I was impressed, man. I thought Swann showed that he's probably the best worker in the company, and showed why he should be the guy on top. I think kind of the discourse was that, oh, Moose should be the guy. Moose should be the guy. Coming out of the 6-man, that's what everybody said. I think tonight, Rich Swann kind of grabbed the ball and was like, man, this is me. I'm the best guy in the company. It's my show. I deserve the match with Kenny Omega, and I can't argue with him. I thought he was fantastic, and made me, watching that match, like going into it, I totally was expecting, because in my mind Moose was going to win, and I'm like, man, Moose is going to do all these big guy spots with Omega. It's going to be awesome. And after this match, I'm just convinced that Swann is going to be able to do the face and peril thing phenomenally when they wrestle. And it's at Rebellion, and it's going to be a lot of fun, man. I cannot wait. I thought this was a really good match, and it really showed just how far Rich Swann has come since leaving WWE. Gosh, was that 3-4 years ago now?
Yeah. One of the things that Swann does that I don't think he gets enough credit for is his selling. Because he was kind of like, he came in from the WWE. He was on 205 Live, and it was just, action, 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 move after move after move. And since he really has become the main eventer in Impact, you could tell that there's a big, heavy Don Callis influence into what he's doing in the ring.
Oh yeah,
because it's straight old school babyface. He's Ricky Morton essentially right now.
Absolutely.
As the main eventer, and he sold the entire match. And like Ricky Morton, worked up to 2 spots, and then I thought in losing the way that Moose lost, I thought that he still looked strong after the match was over. So I don't really think he lost very much by losing this match at all.
No, I mean, top guys got to win. Like, I think we think about that too much. It's like, oh, what did he lose by losing? It's like, man, if you can't lose a match without losing your spot, like, what good are you? Like, and this is a good example of that. Like, you had two guys that are clearly the top of the company. Like, clearly these are the best two guys. Like we talked about, you were saying like the Don Callis, the heavy Southern inspired psychology went into this match with the small guy getting his butt kicked. Like, before the match started, my 5-year-old point at Mooson's said, "Dad, that guy's huge." And I'm like, yes, he is. Sometimes I forget just how damn big Moose is. And it was the perfect psychology. I love, you said the other spot that came to my mind is Moose ripping his dreadlocks out through the guardrail, which, why do we have guardrails if there's no crowd? Think about that.
Yeah. Well,
Makes no sense.
You need something to throw people into.
It's exactly what it is. You got to keep the phantom crowd away because
Yeah.
you hear the voices but see nobody. No, I love that spot. I just can't say enough good things about Rich Swann in this match, man. He really proved that he's the ace of the company.
Yeah. And you know, and to follow up on Moose, you know, I was one of the guys who thought that maybe Moose should be the one to go in at Rebellion to take that spot. And it wasn't because of what he did at Hard to Kill, although I thought he was, you know, next to Omega, I thought he was the most impressive guy. I thought his stock rised the most in that match. And everybody came away from that match talking about him. But you know, since he turned heel, it's been this like slow build into creating this main eventer. So he turned heel back in like 2018, and that's when you really started to see the character Moose. He went from the cheesy former football baby face that you saw in Ring of Honor with the shoulder pads that were way too small, you know, doing the whole Moose chant and stuff like that. And he turned heel, and he's gone through so many different types of character arcs since he's been a heel. And last year when Tessa basically no-showed the taping at COVID and they gave him that TNA champion, he evolved again. He went from like this goofy character to where he was kind of almost portraying like a mix, but like a larger version of like a Ric Flair, Randy Savage. Obviously not as good as them, I'm not saying that, but you know, that's kind of what he was trying to portray. Yeah, the type of character with the bright colors and the robes and the headbands and everything. And you know, and his interviews have just gotten so much better, when before he was just super bland all the time. And so right now I think that in the future state, whenever we get down the road, I think if they're able to sign him to a deal, which that's in flux right now, if they're able to sign him to a deal, I think that's the guy that they go with in the future whenever this thing with Omega ends.
I agree. I think that he is the guy that could carry the company, because I look at Moose and I like him as a heel, to be honest with you. He's got this edge to him as a heel that I think he didn't quite have as a babyface. He's dangerous. I don't think we have enough big badass heels in wrestling anymore. And there's a legitimacy with Moose. There's like a fear, like I think that he can portray onto people. Like, he's got this really impressive aura that I think it's taken him a long time to really figure out how to tap into. But like I say, compared, like I remember watching him at the Frontier Fieldhouse in Chicago Ridge when Ring of Honor would come to town, and this is a different guy now. Like, he's a money heel, in my opinion. Like, this could be the guy. Like, I want to see more of them. I just wish they had more baby face, like good baby faces that he could play off of.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's where
Moose really impressive as someone who isn't totally familiar with Impact. He definitely has that aura, like Mike and you mentioned, JD. He's just cut from a different cloth than everyone else there. And that match with Swann was a classic David and Goliath match where they were both playing to the strengths, and you saw why they both deserved to be fighting for that top title and the unification of it. Okay, so let's move on from this match and talk about the ramifications of the outcome. Rich Swann is the new unified champion, and he's going to be facing Kenny Omega. Mike, what are your feelings on that match? Do you feel like Rich Swann is the guy to beat Omega and be a two Federation champion? Or do you think that Omega might have the advantage in this matchup?
As much as I love Rich Swann, he ain't got a hope in hell of winning this match. And you know, it's one of those things where we all know what the outcome is, but I think we also kind of watch it and we want to see it anyway. because it's kind of it's a historical thing that we're about to witness. It's historical either way, right? If Rich were to win, that would also be historical. But there's no way that AEW is gonna have a champion losing on Impact. And that and there's no reason why they should right now. And so the idea behind bringing Omega to Impact, one of them is to make him kind of like the Ric Flair, the traveling world champion, and Nick Bockwinkel, right? And where he's going to go to all these different companies, Impact, AAA, maybe New Japan down the road. That remains to be seen. So I think Omega comes in, and I think he defeats Rich Swann, and then we probably see Impact or see Omega on Impact maybe every 4 to 6 weeks until he's done being champion. Honestly.
Okay, follow up with that. Do you think that Callis and Scott D'Amore have anybody lined up to kind of be a proxy for Omega if he's not going to be able to be there and defend the championship? Is there anybody on the roster that kind of feels like would be aligned with them for their best interests for the Federation?
Do you mean somebody to be the champion, or somebody just to be their top guy while
Just to be
Omega
their
is
top
out?
guy representing while Omega may not be there.
Yeah, no, it's Moose. Yeah.
Okay.
And Rich Swann obviously too. But as far as if you're talking about star power and the guy that you want at the top of the card, Rich Swann is better in the ring, but I think the total package is Moose. I think he's got everything. So he's absolutely going to be the guy. And I think that, if they do, whenever they do decide to switch the title, because Omega's not going to be the champion forever, when they do decide to switch a title, Moose is the guy to take it from him down the road.
Okay, so you think Moose is kind of slated to maybe take that position as the flag bearer for Impact down the line?
Yeah, well, if they're able to sign him to a contract, yeah.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
yeah,
And
his contract's coming up soon, if it's not already up by now.
What is your confidence level in that?
They don't have a great track record of being able to keep their talent. If you take a look at it, just since I would say, if you take a look at it just from Hard to Kill from 2020, it started. They lost Brian Cage, right? And he was just the world champion. John Morrison obviously was their world champion. He's gone. Tessa Blanchard, different circumstances there, but gone. Michael Elgin, they're obviously different circumstances, but gone. Taya Valkyrie, MSK, who were called the Rascals in Impact, gone. Jordan Grace, writing's on the wall there too, right? So if you start losing a bunch of matches in a row in your contracts, dude, chances are you're gone. We saw Ethan Page, boom, gone. So they don't have a great track record of being able to retain their talent. Now they were able to come to a deal with Sami Callihan. Fortunately for Impact, Sami Callihan not very desirable. Although he works on, he's good for that show. He's good for what they do, but not a whole lot of people were knocking on his door, right? Now, the thing about Moose is, and this is where it gets a little bit tricky, he's got a domestic violence charge from whenever he was in Atlanta Falcon. Now, charges were dropped, and I read into the situation. I read the police reports because I did an article on it not too long ago, and it kind of looks like there were, it wasn't exactly the way that it was being painted in the media per the reports. And then the Atlanta Journal-Constitution kind of made it seem like, she came at him with a knife or with some scissors or something, and he pushed her into the stairs, but people thought that he pushed her down the stairs or something like that. So it seems like it was a big blow up, a big misunderstanding. Charges were dropped, and then he continued on his NFL career. Now, that's not saying much. You can do a whole lot of stuff and still be a football player. But, if he were working for WWE and he did that, he'd probably, still have a job afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think they're looking to bring guys like that in. And plus he's, 37, 38 years old. And so that's another strike against him. Obviously, the age is not a big deal for AEW right now, nor is it for WWE. They just brought in Eli Drake. And he's like 40. but I think the domestic violence charge does hurt him a little bit in being able to sign a new deal somewhere.
I remember that being a topic of conversation when he left Ring of Honor the first time, was him going to WWE, and the domestic violence charge took that away this time. I can't see them not at least kicking the tires on Moose because of the way he's looked. They've got a lot of questionable people under contract at the moment. So I don't see how they don't take a flyer on Moose this time. He's been so impressive in the last year, and I think AEW should too. It's bad for Impact, but I mean, it's a pay to play league, man.
Yeah.
Like you gotta cash out. Like I don't see how he doesn't get looks from everybody. Like if I'm New Japan, I think I might talk to him too, because I think I think where he's at right now in his game, I think he can hang with a lot of those guys up there too.
He looks tremendous for what he's presenting in the ring. One last question for you, Mike, on this thread. Given your experience and aptitude for the product, who would you like to see as the next world champion after Kenny Omega, if it's not Moose?
Oh, if it's not Moose, man, that gets tough because after Moose and Rich Swann, there's kind of a drop off. So they are building. I don't know if you guys are familiar with them, but his name's Jake something. They're trying to build him, and if he gets a little bit better at his promos, I think they have a guy in Jake something. But again, he was doing like an undercard comedy act the last couple of years where he was losing every match, and then now they're just trying to build him as a monster. So if we're talking future state, they have time to build him up. But since they have turned him, he's gotten away from that kind of undercard babyface or not undercard comedy stuff that he was doing there for a long time with Cody Deaner. He has looked quite impressive. In fact, him and Moose main evented a few weeks ago on Impact, and it was a great match. So, and he was able to hang with him. But if gun to my head, it would be Ace Austin. I think that if you got Moose and Rich Swann, and then that next tier down, that's Ace Austin, and plus he's only 24 years old, and he can literally hang with anybody. He can do any move out there. He has a lot of charisma. He's clearly a big fan of Gambit from the X-Men, and so I used to watch that cartoon when I was a kid, and he was one of my favorite characters, so he gets extra points for me for that. And
we're in friendly territory with that
now. yeah. And so I think he's the guy, and I was excited for him to win the title tonight from TJP. So I think that's the guy you go with, TJ or Ace Austin.
Ace Austin was a highlight of the show tonight. Moving on, JD, you wrote an article maybe 4 or 5 months ago when Don Callis reached out to you and wanted to discuss his relationship with Kenny Omega. Now, what we're seeing tonight is the fruition of the match that was born from that conversation, as it were. One of the quotes in the article that he gave to you was him making clear that one way or another, Kenny Omega was coming to Impact. He was going to make it happen. When you were discussing this with him, how much confidence did you feel in what he was telling you versus what you see today? What is the shift in what he told you versus what you're seeing pay off?
So Don Callis reached out to me out of the blue for this article because I wrote this really nice thing about Chris Jericho's 25th anniversary podcast and how it kind of reshaped wrestling. And he literally DM'd me and was like, "Hey man, I like your piece. Do you do this stuff often?" And I was like, "Yeah, I do." So then a month later, he's like, "Hey, I got something for you. Do you want to do an interview?" Absolutely. And I was talking with Garrett, our captain with Fight Game, and his whole thing was, "What does he want?" And I said, "I'm not sure." After that conversation, I knew exactly what he wanted. And I threw something out there to him. I said, "So never say never, right? About never coming back to AEW, right? Never say never." He's like, "No, never. I can never go back again. Like this just wouldn't work out, da 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 da." And I kind of, I'm like, okay. All right, I'll put that down. That's what you're saying. That's your quote. The Impact. I think when he said the Kenny Omega thing, that Kenny Omega would have come to Impact, I knew immediately that was going to be what people jumped on. Like it was very clear what he was doing in this. Like it was very clear he was looking to throw little bits of information out there. I didn't think he was going to use it to quite what they've done, but I was glad to play. I was glad to play a Mark role and all that. You know, I don't know, man. Like it's interesting in retrospect to see what's happened from it. I when he first said it, my first thought was, "There's no chance they could have made that happen." I went, well, maybe Kenny's that loyal, and that was the one line that I really like spent like a couple of days thinking about as I was putting the article together, and I went with it, But it was just like it's something about it was like I don't know if this guy's just full of his own crap or if they know something that I don't know. So it was interesting. Clearly, they were setting. I didn't foresee this as being like a promotion versus promotion rivalry. Like I didn't see that coming at all, which is cool. We got something better. But like, yeah, I don't know, man. It's interesting. I didn't think it was going to work out quite the way it did.
I don't think anybody really saw what he was doing at the time and how it managed to pay off. But I'm going to ask you guys this. Are you excited for next month?
Yeah.
Like, are you going to buy this show based off of what you've seen and the promotion and the build?
So my first question is, Mike, do I have to buy this next show? Am I going to kick myself for spending money on this next show?
Yeah. So, well, am I going to buy the show? That remains to be seen. Am I going to watch the show? Absolutely. I'll be watching. I'll be watching Rebellion. Thankfully, I've had a pretty good partnership with Fight, and I've been able to give away a lot of pay-per-views, and most of them Impact. And I have a new contest dropping on Monday for something completely different, irrelevant to what we're talking about. But I'm still part of that team, even though I've been giving away less pay-per-views lately. But this will be a traditional pay-per-view. This is not an Impact Impact Plus app special. It's a $40 Saturday night pay-per-view. And so I think a lot of people confuse the monthly specials with something that they're not, and when they're looking at them, it's like, oh, I'm not going to pay for that. And then whenever I tried to explain to you guys that you didn't have to pay tonight. that you didn't have to pay, but even if you did, it's a monthly subscription to their streaming service, and this show comes with it. But then the pay-per-views are completely different. They're not offered on their streaming service. So
I'm going to take advantage of it. I'm going to look back on some of the interactions between AEW and Impact that have happened that I have not seen yet. I should make clear, I have not watched a whole lot going into this because I've been primarily an AEW viewer, and I wanted to take the context to understand these two federations coming together because, quite frankly, this really has not happened in our lifetime as wrestling fans. We should be taking this in for what it is. We have two promotions with TV programming coming together and doing an interpromotional match. This is great. This is the kind of thing that we talk about and fantasy book and discuss in such a way, and we're seeing it through.
Well, I gotta correct you right there. It's three companies, baby. Three companies.
Right.
New Japan is a part of this deal too.
The closest thing we've had is Pro Wrestling USA. That's the closest thing it's been, and that was '85.
Yeah, and and then you had Battle of the Belts back in the '80s and stuff, but those are more territories coming together.
Mm-hmm.
I think I just had it up recently, Battle of the Belts with Wahoo McDaniel and Ric Flair. I actually happen to own that one, so I was kicking it on the other day. So but with this, everybody's like they're questioning just how strong the relationship is between AEW and Impact, and I'll just stick with that one since that was our main topic. Well, and I responded to them that because they're like everybody's kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop, because that's kind of what happens in wrestling. Someone is going to try to undermine the other one, right? And I think people thought that that's what was happening with the whole Sammy Guevara situation, which was totally overblown. But here's how strong the relationship is. This match and the latest the impacts that have been on the last month, they were all taped a month ago. And this past Tuesday on Impact, when they announced that they would be taking on the winner would be taking on Kenny Omega at Rebellion, they announced him as the champion. That was taped a month ago, and that didn't leak out. And AEW trusted Impact with the information that Kenny Omega is going to go ahead and beat John Moxley, and that didn't really leak out, even though Dave Meltzer, God love him, did spoil this main event. I was reading the Observer, and like he just had it in oh, by the way, Swan and Moose are wrestling, and Swan wins. I'm just like, thanks, Dave, but they could have gave me a heads up on that one. So some stuff did leak out, but the AEW stuff didn't leak at all, and they kept that really close to the vest. So I would say that there is some trust there, and people are questioning why. Are we're going to get into the tag team title match, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I'll talk about that whenever we get to the tag title match.
I think the only thing I would like to add to the interpromotional aspect of it is we're really in the beginning stages. We've been trained to have this sense of instant gratification with other wrestling promotions in the past. And what we're seeing here is the beginning of an angle. We're not in the middle of anything right now. I have a feeling that this whole Omega Summer, whatever it is going to go all the way through September, November. We're going to get fans. This is a gateway to excite the entire wrestling community into something that's bigger in a way that we all haven't been able to come together and join in a major wrestling event because of the pandemic. So I kind of find the timing of it to be really interesting because we're all going to be invested, and then we're all going to be able to get together and watch the payoff to these angles live. And that's going to be a great time.
It's the perfect timing. Like we've had like all these companies kind of need each other right now because they're coming off really difficult years financially. Like we've had no gates for a year now. So everyone needs something to kind of spark interest again. And the only thing that everyone can do is kind of work together. Like I like this attitude that it's everybody versus the big monster. Right. And that just makes wrestling far more interesting. If we are like, I like how you compared Omega to a Ric Flair traveling champion, right? That's like, I said the same thing about Moxley, and I comparing him to Harley Race and some of the stuff that I wrote. So the through line is right there with the AEW champion kind of being the guy who can bridge across all these different, I don't want to call them territories, but all these different promotions and do stuff. And I would love to see like just an all, like a Woodstock of wrestling, just get everyone together on one real show. And it's not 1985, so the egos aren't what they were in the mid 80s because the business isn't what it was in the mid 80s, right? It's a completely different landscape. Everyone is far stronger together than they are separated. And I just hope we're able to remember that. Like, even if it doesn't work for 20 years, if it works for 2, it's going to be a lot of fun.
Mike, you got anything to add?
No, I completely agree, and I really like that the egos aren't what they used to be because I think it all starts with Tony Khan because Tony Khan's one of us, right? He was back in the late 90s, early 2000s. He was on the same message boards that a lot of us were on, and reading all the dirt and the gossip and the things and doing fantasy booking and all that stuff. So I think it starts with him, and then I think that he has a good partner Impact because Impact can't really afford to have an ego in this situation, and they burned a lot of bridges for a long time, and it's taken a lot of time to repair those relationships. And so you got to credit Scott D'Amore and Don Callis with that, because up until recently, New Japan still thought Jeff Jarrett was leading Impact, and he still thought that it was TNA, despite seeing Jeff Jarrett go into the Hall of Fame in the WWE. They still kind of likened Callis and D'Amore as the guys who ruined Okada when he came to the States for his excursion. So they have a lot to bridges to rebuild, and I think they're doing a good job of rebuilding those bridges, and we saw a lot of that tonight.
Yeah, unfortunately, they got put in such a bad position over the last decade, right? Of it just eroding and eroding and eroding. And I think they finally realized that there's more value and impact for a name having that belt on Kenny Omega
Mhm.
is far more valuable than having it on just about anybody.
Yeah.
Right. Like it's just going to give like Kenny, as long as Kenny Omega has this really bad habit of forgetting to bring belts places. So as long as he remembers to bring that impact belt with him, along with the AAA mega title, like as long as we can start seeing Kenny Omega looking like the Ultimo Dragon circa 1997, I think it's going to make his stock rise, and it's going to make the stock of wrestling rise, because it'll be something people can talk about. Like you can't just you can't be like Austin Aries when he was walking around with like 8,000 belts, but nobody knew where any of them were from. Right. As long as these all are stuff that matters, it's good for wrestling.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing about Kenny Omega, if he wins the Impact World Championship, or people like, oh, what if he wins the championship? What does it say about Impact? Well, what it tells me about Impact is that their world champion is one of the best in the world.
Right.
It's Kenny Omega, right? And well, it's like, oh, he's an AEW wrestler. Well, guess what? He's an Impact wrestler too.
He's the champion.
He's the champion. Yeah.
There's two draws outside the WWE, two major draws. It's Jon Moxley and Kenny Omega.
That's it.
That's wrestling right now. And you're going to have your title on one of those guys who does matter. Like you look at the Impact ratings every week. Since Kenny Omega became a part of Impact, it has gotten more eyes. This pay-per-view will do numbers for them that they haven't seen in years. I don't know if it's going to be like Joe Angle numbers, realistically speaking, but it's going to be good for where they are. And people got to understand that there's a lot of, like, we see it on our Fight Game message board all the time. There's people that just will not watch Impact. I was one of them for a long time. I'm like, I don't want to watch Impact. And it was actually reading you and stuff following your stuff, like, oh, maybe I should pay attention a little bit more. And then Kenny's in, and I think they still have a lot of way to go, but I think they're trying. I think the program has gotten better over the last 5 months. I really do.
Yeah.
The other thing that I would add to that is if Kenny Omega wants the Impact title, then the Impact title is a desirable title.
Yeah. He puts it over. That's the definition of putting it over. If he wants that Impact title, that Impact title is a thing of desire. Now we have a storyline. You've got your protagonist with his goal. Like, you've got something that matters. Like it becomes just having him wanting it is more important. It's way more valuable than when you had a bunch of guys in TNA shitting on the company because it was like they thought it was WCW 2.0. Like, that doesn't help anybody when the whole through line of the company is, boy, doesn't this company suck? Having Kenny Omega, and they still do kind of have that a little bit of Impact, but having Kenny Omega want that title makes it more important.
Yeah. And somebody was telling me, and I try not to get into Twitter fights because I'm almost 30.
Better man than me.
Yeah, I'm almost 38 years old, so I'm like, why am I getting into a Twitter fight? But somebody did say something to me that I thought was just stupid. It said, well, why is Kenny lowering himself to go to Impact? And I'm like, he's not lowering himself to do anything. He's bringing them up to his level. Correct. That's what the fuck he's doing, right? He's not lowering himself for anything. And so he is bringing up another company up to his level. Like, well, why would Tony Khan do that? It's not good business sense. Yes, it is. If he can bring this company up and then bring those stars onto his show, now they're big stars too, right? It makes sense to get everybody up to higher levels than they were before.
Absolutely. Like it's so cliche. The lifting tide rises all ships. Like, it's corny, but there's reality to it. If there's more value in wrestling outside WWE, there's more value for the competitors. There's more value for the companies. What Kenny Omega is doing is the opposite of what a lot of guys would do back in the day. I like the way he thinks. He sees things as a challenge. He's like, I can elevate this. I can bring this up. I can add star power to this. Like the death match. Yeah, it didn't work out great, but look at the numbers they did. The idea of Kenny Omega doing an exploding barbed wire death match made people pay attention, right? The idea of Kenny going and claiming this Impact title is going to bring more eyes on the company. It's going to literally put it over, right? This is how we rebuild, as we've been in such a, like, realistically, independent wrestling has been popular for a number of years now, but it's been very insular, right? So now what they've got to do now is take that insulation and really start pushing it outward and really start trying to mainstream it. They've never had a vehicle to do it before. Now we do. We have that vehicle, right? And it's not just Kenny Omega, because now you can have, there's no reason saying Moxley can't appear on AEW, or we just had the tag team title situation happens tonight. Like, there's no reason why random things can't happen, people can't show up, and it makes wrestling more exciting. People, you can throw the numbers of TV at me all you want, but I mean, realistically speaking, this is the environment we live in, and this is better for what we like. This is better for our hobby.
100%. It feels like 2021 pro wrestling is the perfect metaphor for just when you think you have all the answers, they change the question. Let's go ahead and move on and do a quick recap of the rest of the card. Start at the bottom, give a quick recap, thumbs up, thumbs down, what you think, and then we'll take this review home, guys. Mike, do you feel like guiding us through the card and the results?
You know what? I can start with the Good Brothers match and go down, but once we get to the mixed tag and the match with Decay and Reno Scum, I have not seen those matches yet.
Because take care of it from there.
All right, cool. Because one thing people need to learn about me is literally nothing in the world gets in my way of family dinner. We 100%. Have dinner at 5:00, me and my wife and my daughter, and nothing's getting in the way of that. So I didn't get into about 5:30, 5:35. When I initially tried to get in, there was an error because their app sucks and it was broken again. But I did publicly complain, and then I realized I was complaining about something that I wasn't paying for. So I relaxed a little bit and gave them some kudos when they fixed it. So anyway, so the co-main event was the Good Brothers, the Impact World Tag Team Champions, against Finjuice, David Finlay and Juice Robinson. And Finjuice won. I did not expect that. I did not see that coming, especially because here in a few hours they're going to be in the New Japan Cup in Japan. So I honestly did not see that coming whatsoever.
Yeah, huge surprise there. And again, we talked about the trust earlier. Gallows and Anderson showing up on live AEWs for the last several months with those tag team titles. Mm-hmm. So there you go. There's that trust between the company. So now you're going to have, in relation to this, Gallows and Anderson are going to wrestle Mox and Kingston this week on the show. The complexity of that match changes. And now Gallows and Anderson can honestly take a loss. I mean, this stuff all kind of makes sense when you look at it in a, outside of a bubble, which, by the way, great match. Finjuice, again, like we said, getting more eyes. The hardcore fans, these are the people we're talking about here. That matters. Juice Robinson and David Finlay matter. If you pay attention to New Japan, you're more likely to pay attention to Impact. Like, they need more teams in that division, quite frankly, but this is a big step. It's good. I love it.
Yeah, I thought, I'm having trouble calling it the match of the night. I know, Jeremy, I think that you thought it was the match of the night. I think that if there's an argument that means it was pretty good, right? And so I really, really enjoyed it, and the result is what surprised me the most. And I'm a New Japan guy too, but as far as the tag teams in New Japan, I didn't really have them that high up on the level. But even though I absolutely love Juice Robinson, I think that he could be a top babyface in any company. His promos are fantastic, and that he's had some awesome matches as a singles babyface. I miss the dreadlocks though. Gotta say, I miss the dreadlocks, and I miss the shiny tights with all the different colors in the robe. I'm not sure I'm digging his I don't know what he's going for, his bowler hat with Frank Turner type of style that he's got going on, but
Blues Brother. He's doing a little bit of the Blues Brothers thing. It's Joliet, Illinois. That still means something out here. So
okay, he's Jim Belushi. He's trying to do that. So, I'm sorry, John Belushi. What an idiot. But I thought that this was a fantastic match, and I thought Finjuice and the Good Brothers, I gotta say something about the Good Brothers. I thought that when they came into Impact, they were going to be Hall and Nash style lazy. I really did. And they have not done that in any match. And I really thought they turned it up a couple levels for this one.
These guys today just can't get away with what the people back then did. And they're cut from a different cloth. Like they're in New Japan where you kind of got to bring it a little bit more. Like
Yeah.
even what's considered lazy in New Japan still is like a high level of work ethic in comparison to the grand scheme of things. Like you just don't see guys like that going to a company like Impact and literally trying to do nothing like you would have a decade ago. Right.
Yeah.
I've enjoyed, I don't know, they're controversial. Like, I mean, you can not like their shtick, but I think the work rate with them is really good for what they are. You know, like they're a good tag team. I really like Carl Anderson. Doc Gallows gets what he is. Like he's a big guy that moves real well. And they had a great match with the two of them. Like it was I don't know if I call it New Japan style match, but it was a good match. Like I enjoyed it a lot.
I don't think I've seen this Gallows and Anderson in a very long time. I haven't seen them in WWE. I have not been admittedly following Impact, but even when I've seen them on AEW and on BTE, that wasn't this Gallows and Anderson. This was a main event tag team coming in and treating the Impact titles as if it was the most important titles that they had. And they fought tooth and nail. Unfortunately, didn't come out with the win, but this was a different Gallows and Anderson, and this is a Gallows and Anderson that I wouldn't mind watching in the future. What if they're doing elsewhere? I'm not into. This I'm okay with. That's why I was pleasantly surprised when Spin Juice won the titles. I don't think anybody was expecting that.
No.
Mike had mentioned that the results were already out there. And so when they won, it felt like everyone would have already known that, and nobody did. And it was probably the best moment in the entire show for me.
Because I think it was the most surprising. Like, you know, I think everybody, like even it was reasonable that main event could have gone 50-50. Now their guy winning, I think, is a surprise, right? Which is a good main event because it could go either way. Nobody saw this one coming. No, this is really good. I agree. I hope this is the Gallows and Anderson we see Wednesday night on Dynamite because I did like the A game they brought to this match.
Thumbs up for me, you guys.
Thumbs up.
Thumbs up.
Yep.
Deonna Purrazzo match. What'd you think, Mike?
Well, here's where things get a little tricky. I think that I like ODB. I do. I think ODB works a lot better when she has a crowd to play off of. I think her shtick works a lot better. I was not a fan of the interference at the beginning and the way that they got kicked out, because that was the same exact thing they did last month. Literally the same act. Like the two ladies interfere and then the same referee kicks them out in the same exact way. It is a tired shtick. I'm done with that. However, once that got over with, I thought that Deonna and ODB had a really nice match, and it was what it needed to be. And Deonna went over strong, which is exactly what should have happened. I don't think ODB really had any business being in the match, but you know, there's been a mass exodus of the knockouts over the last 6 to 8 months. You know, they. And it started with Tessa, right? They lost Tessa, and then Kylie Ray went through everything that she had to go through, and then she retired. They just recently lost Taya Valkyrie, right? They had some ladies that were coming in and that were not signed to contracts that are on other shows. So they really, and then now Jordan Grace, it looks like she's probably out the door too. So, and I hope I'm wrong about that. I'm hoping I'm wrong about that for the sake of Impact. But you know, it's not looking good for that division, which is why, you know, it's kind of thin right now, which is why you see ODB in a title match.
JD, what did you think of the match?
It was okay.
Yeah.
I mean, like, just how I feel. Like, I'll be honest, like I hear the great things about the knockouts division. You read it all the time, but when I see it, I'm always kind of like, that's okay. You know, I never feel like I'm moved by it. Peraza's good. She's real good. ODB is a gimmick. And this was never in doubt. There was way too much interference on the undercard in this show.
Yes.
Way too much. So by the time that was happening, I kind of zoned out. I was kind of like, oh, okay, this again. I like the finishing sequence. Peraza's good, but yeah, it's fine. You know.
It was the match I was most intrigued by looking at the card ahead of time, and it was fine. You guys are absolutely right. I would say a thumbs in the middle match.
Yeah, thumbs in the middle.
Yeah. No, yeah.
We had the Ace Austin and TJP match for the X Division Championship, which Ace Austin won. thoughts,
Yeah.
gentlemen?
I love the fact that Ace Austin won. I think TJP is a really good wrestler. I'll go so far as to say he is a great wrestler. I don't think he's a great representative of the company as a champion. That doesn't mean I think he should be fired or anything like that. I'm not a guy like if he ain't hurting and killing nobody, he says stupid stuff on Twitter. Cool, keep him around. He can go. But I think that his time has passed. He's been in Impact off and on since like 2005, whenever he was under the Puma mask. I don't know if you guys even remember that. You guys might not have even watched back then. And then he also was Suicide and he was Manic, and now he's just back as regular TJP. He can really wrestle, and I thought this was an excellent match. I really do. But part of that is because I have such a high opinion of Ace Austin, and I was just super excited that he won this match. And he is a guy that I really think that if they're able to keep him, they could build the company around him. He does have some work to do on some other aspects of his game, but once he cleans those things up, he's going to be a big star for them.
He's so young, Ace
Yeah.
Austin, 24. Like that's nothing in the grand scheme of things. That's younger than the vast majority of the Performance Center. Like,
Yeah.
I got into Ace Austin a couple years ago when he was with MLW, and I always thought he was a guy who showed a ton of potential, over there. But they never really did anything with him. Like, he was just kind of a guy you'd see on the show, and like he cosplays Gambit, but he had decent matches. So I liked what I've seen with him in Impact. I think he has tapped into a little bit more of his personality, a little bit more. I'd like to see some more personality from him. I like the gimmick with him and Fulton. I think it's a good look. I think they work well together. I think he's got a lot of potential. I think he's the right guy to have the X Division title right now. TJP is probably one of the best unsigned talents in the world right now.
Mm-hmm.
But he does it to him. He's done it to himself is the reason why he's an unsigned talent. So I'll never say a TJP match is bad, but I enjoy watching him wrestle, but I can't get invested in watching him wrestle because it just like he gives me there's no reason for me to like get into him. Like I have no reason to like the guy. So I mean, just for me, it's always like, oh, it's a good TJP match. Yep.
Yeah.
Feel the same way I feel when he's on Strong. Yeah, good TJP match. But I just can't get into him, man. It's I feel like he's a guy who's been around forever and he's been everywhere for good reason.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
He's a very good wrestler.
Very good wrestler.
He's not very charismatic. And honestly, a lot of times, no matter what show he's on, he just seems like he doesn't really care if he's there or not. Right.
I agree.
Yeah.
If they let him cut promos with his Twitter voice, he might be the most hated man in the country. He might be the most over heel in the world, but it just doesn't come through because you read his tweets, you're like, God, this guy's such a penis. And then you watch him and you're like, I don't feel that way. Like, I don't when I read his Twitter, I'm like, God, this guy's a jerk. Mm-hmm. If he could find a way to channel that into his performance, he could be a hell of a heel. But like you said, he just doesn't, there's just something that doesn't work. Like if that guy could really take his unlikability and channel that into pro wrestling, he could really have something. Yeah. But he just doesn't.
I think they started a slow turn this past Tuesday where he was involved with I told Jeremy Peoples I would bring this up. So this is for you, Jeremy, if you do watch this. He was on Swingers Palace this past week, and he was acting kind of like he didn't want to be there, and didn't really care about the X Division, didn't care about his title, and he got called out by Josh Alexander, and I think that was the slow turn to turning him heel, and that's good news because him and Josh Alexander had a hell of a match a few weeks ago on Impact. It was out freaking standing. Those two guys just tore the house down. So hopefully we get to see that.
That's a guy I hope we can use more in the future, Josh Alexander. I hope there's going to be some spots opened up, and he's a guy who's going to have an opportunity. He should take the ball and run with it, to use the cliche.
So I'm familiar with X Division matches. I'm familiar with TJP. Not familiar with Ace Austin. With that said, the right guy won that match.
Yeah, he's good.
Let's move on. We have Fire and Flava defeated Jordan Grace and Jazz for the tag team women titles.
Yeah,
it was there.
Yeah, this was it was okay. I when Jazz is in the ring, I think maybe because I'm such a fan of her from a long time ago that I grade her on a curve, if that makes sense. I think I do the same thing with Muto, where it's like, and
Guilty.
yeah, and there were times in the match where I thought she looked good, and then there were other times where it's like, man, you could tell she was hurting, so I kind of felt bad for her. When Jordan Grace came in the ring, you could tell she was far and away better than every single person in there, and she has an intensity about her that nobody else had in that match. Fire and Flava are still green, and they have a lot of personality, they have a lot of character. But it's going to take some time with them. And I do think that they're they're right for the Knockouts Tag Team division. Look, it's an undercard title that's not going to get a whole lot of time in anytime soon until they step their game up. And it gives more women more stuff to do, and I think that's cool. But the Knockouts tag division is thin. The Knockouts division is completely thin, and part of the reason is because they have the tag titles, right? They don't have enough women going for the singles title, so they thinned out one division with another division that they don't even have, right? So that's the issue there. So they're gonna have to figure that out. They need to go and sign every unsigned woman that they possibly can and bring them onto the roster. Once they figure out what's going on with these other contracts that they have that they're dealing with.
People are hard on the AEW women's division. That's what I think every time I watch a Knockouts match. Like, because I think a lot of times if I watch these matches happen on Wednesday night instead of Tuesday night, people will be a lot harder on them. And again, they're not bad, but I agree with you on Fire and Flavor. They're green, but there's a lot of talent there. There's a lot of charisma there. It's just not clicking quite yet. And they're young, and you can tell they're young in the business, but it's okay. It's all right. Like I said, I do think this Jordan Grace is far and away the best talent. You're 100% correct on that. I think that if we have a working relationship, we need to send some of these women who aren't getting the reps they need over to Impact, where they can get more reps, and we can.
Yeah.
This is how relationships should work, is they should be sharing talent back and forth, because there is a lot of people on AEW who aren't getting the reps they need, and then there's people on Impact who they've got two divisions and not enough people to stack either division. Seems like a solution is really clear if we just commit and go for it. But there's whatever you have to work through. Yeah, it is. It's okay. I mean, when Jordan Grace was in there, it was pretty good. It was fine. I mean, like, I think the right team went over because they're the team, right? They're clearly a tag team. So I'm fine building the division around them. They need work. They're kind of like Private Party. They remind me a lot of Private Party right now.
Yeah.
We're getting to the point of the show where these were all just matches. So let's just cover the next two back-to-back real quick. We had Violent by Design. Diener and Joe Doring defeated Beer Guns with James Storm and Chris Sabin. And then we also had the Eddie Edwards defeated Brian Myers in a hold harmless match. There seemed to be a lot of backstory that somebody coming into these matches really didn't have a whole lot of understanding. If we could boil it down to 30 seconds to a minute explanation of what was going on into the match and whether we're going forward with it, I think that'd probably be the best way to go.
So with I'll start with Eddie Edwards and Brian Myers. Do you guys want to know why he's wearing an eye patch?
Yes, please.
Okay.
He looks like a pirate, and I'd like to know why.
Well, I think he's going for the Solid Snake from Metal Gear. I got JD to pop. I got him to pop. That's great. So Eddie Edwards bit him in the eyeball, so that's why he wears an eye patch. And then
is that a thing? Is that even possible? I mean, that's
Eddie. They were in a match, and Myers was cheating, so Eddie bit him in the eyeball. And
you need a significant overbite for that.
Yeah. So that's why he wears an eye patch now. So and to get his back, he hired Hernandez from LAX. So to be his henchman. So and then you got Matt Cardona intertwined into that. Matt Cardona has come out to save Eddie Edwards a few times. I honestly thought Cardona was going to turn on Edwards and join up with Myers, but that didn't happen. I think they're going to go forward with the Myers Cardona match, like the Major Brothers, fighting, which it's like, they're like best friends. They host a podcast together every week. So, and I'll be honest, like, I know everybody was into the woo stuff with Zack Ryder back in the day. I was not one of those guys. I don't think that he's a particularly very good wrestler, and I don't find him all that interesting. I think Brian Myers can go, but I also don't find him interesting. So um, the only thing that captured my attention was I just happened to really like Eddie Edwards. So again, this match was just kind of there, tons of interference. And thankfully it wasn't like a screw job finish or anything. It was a hardcore match, which Edwards seems to be doing a lot of lately. So
It's
Myers,
probably for the best that the lower mid carders in WWE are lower mid carders over in Impact. And I don't mean that disparagingly, but
no,
it's better for the brand.
but you're right though, and this is like these guys came up in the Monopoly era where they were brought up as a lower mid card wrestling guys, and that's all they were ever supposed to be. Like if these guys came up a decade prior, they'd have bounced around a few different places and would have learned to not just work in the ring, but learn how to work crowds, learn how to get over. Like they intentionally weren't taught those things. So when Zack Ryder got that little bit of shine, he didn't know what to do with it. Right. And so now, consequently, in the decade, it's been a decade since then, he still doesn't know what to do with it. Like these are the problems with having a one major US system. Is like you have a generation of guys who came up in WWE and really aren't as, I don't want to say aren't as good because I hate putting that term on them, but I mean like they didn't have to learn how the guys who spent careers in Ring of Honor and in the older TNA and who guys who came up through Japan, guys who bounced around the indies really did. They never really learned to get over. So consequently, when they go to a place like Impact, that's all they know. They're mid-card guys. They don't know how to be anything more than mid-card guys. When Matt Cardona showed up in AEW earlier this year, it was obvious. It's like he kind of got lost in the shuffle when he got a spotlight. He got one of the biggest spotlights of his career post, getting tossed off a stage by Kane, and he just fell into the background. This is kind of what they are because that's what they were trained to be, and it's a shame. But yeah, that doesn't make sense to have two guys who we all know are best friends fighting each other. Like, just why get invested in it if you guys aren't going to get invested in it? That's kind of my thought about this.
Yep.
Strong point. We've already probably spent too much time talking about this, so we'll go back to the first two matches. Mike, you missed these two matches. We'll cover them real quick, and then we'll get a general grade for the show and take it home. Tennille Dashwood and Caleb with a K defeated Havoc and Nevaeh. It was a good match. Nevaeh, I believe, had the pin, but they got the distraction with Caleb turning the roll up through. Did not seem very memorable, but I was curious about the intergender aspect of the match. Is that something that they do a lot in Impact?
No, they do it, but it's rare. They have not done it since I want to say October. So, but it is something they do every now and then. Yeah.
Interesting. And then last match was Decay versus Reno Scum. I'm a personal fan of Reno Scum from their time in APW. Shout out to Marcus Mack and John LaRocca. But it was probably my second favorite match third favorite match behind the two co-main events. It got me in the mood of thinking that there was some promise to the match.
So I should go back and watch it.
I would say go back and watch it. It's fun.
Okay. Yeah, I like Reno Scum, and I'm a big fan of Taurus. I think he's fantastic. And you know what? People crap on Crazy Steve, but man, in the Super X Cup earlier this year, and then in a couple of matches after, he really impressed me. I did not know he could go like that. He was always kind of a gimmick to me, which it's fine. You need those guys around too, right? Not everybody can be the same, but he impressed me with his in-ring. So I'm looking forward to that.
Isn't he blind, Crazy Steve? Isn't like in real life he's actually blind? Or legally blind?
He is legally blind. Yeah.
That's impressive that he could do what he can do. Not really. I mean, that's being able to see. Like it just that is so impressive to me. Black Taurus is awesome. This whole thing is a perfect opener for this show because I watched it like, oh, that's pretty good. I'm into this. Yeah. Like Taurus is great. It was good. I took forever to get the miss spot from Rosemary. Took forever to set that up. That was the one part of the match I was like, okay, a little too long. But that's a nitpick. I enjoyed this match.
Highlight for me was the spots between Luster and Taurus. Those two going at it with each other was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Overall feeling on the show, thumbs up, thumbs in the middle.
For me, it's a thumbs up. It didn't. There were like 10 matches, and I think maybe 4 of them were pretty good. I thought 2 of them I thought were excellent, and so and then you got something to talk about afterwards. So I think that if you got all those things, that's a thumbs up for me.
Really?
It's a thumbs way down if you take out those last 2 matches, but those last 2 matches do a lot to bring it up. So I'm a thumbs up, but I'm a milder thumbs up because like I mean, like I'm not following Impact week to week, so I mean, like a lot of the lower card stuff had a hard time keeping my attention. I was not following stories. I didn't love the work in all of them, but they were all right, I guess. So for me, it's a thumbs up. It's a mild thumbs up, though.
Yeah, I'm gonna go
Like
with thumbs in the middle, leaning upward.
Yeah.
I was really impressed with the effort put forth for a product I was unfamiliar with. And I had a thought during the middle of it that I was enjoying this more than any recent episode of Monday Night Raw, for example. And it's the same amount of time and it's the same investment. So somebody we're looking into Impact and thinking to get into it, it's definitely better than some of the alternatives out there. Mike, why don't you give us a couple of quick plugs for yourself, and then we'll follow up with JD.
Yeah, so you can follow me on Twitter at Combat Republic. That's kind of my website's Twitter handle. You can follow my personal Twitter, but it's super boring. I just talk about football and I shit on Donald Trump. So you can do that if you want to. It's at Get Up Mike. And I have recently started. I've moved my Impact columns over to Fight Game Media. I kind of just do one big weekly column there, a la Dave Meltzer. But I just one long. Man, this last one was like almost 2,000 words. It was exhausting, and but I was able to knock it out. And so, it's called Brace for Impact, and I do that for Fight Game Media now. And then my website's still live. Most of it sucks, but man, we have a really good writer who does some HBO Max deep dives every now and then. So that's probably the best thing you can find on my website.
Shout out to my buddy Mike for allowing me to keep HBO Max. I can use it as a write-off, so I can keep watching these movies and I get to pontificate my thoughts. I wrote 2,000 words on Adventures in Babysitting last month. I didn't know I had that in me. I didn't know I had that in me. I write for Fight Game Media as well. I cover mostly Japan and amateur wrestling. Excuse me. So that's the best place to find me is over on Fight Game. My Twitter handle is at JD_Oliva. I write retrospective pieces for WrestleJoy. I don't talk about anything current. I just did like a memoriam for Jim Crockett Jr. and why I loved him as a promoter and his territory. So that's the kind of stuff. If you're into talking about back in the day stuff, that's what I'm doing over on that site. But for all my modern thoughts, I just did a thing on the Noah show, which starts in like 20 minutes. I did a thing for that for Fight Game today. So I'll have a big NCAA wrestling piece coming up later this week for them. So Fight Game is the stuff.
The work never stops, gentlemen. I want to thank you for your time. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and we'll talk soon.
Take care, guys.